Okay, so what I just did for everyone was give a quick background of the Iran-Contra affair. If you need to, go ahead on YouTube. History Channel has like a 5-minute overview of it. That might be a good way to figure it out. So on this date in 1987 was the start of televised hearings, and lots of Americans watched it. It got a lot of ratings. And like I said, this was before cable news, before Fox News, CNN, all that stuff. It got a lot of attention. Remember, mass media is one of our terms, right? So I just gave you an even shorter overview here, okay? The Iran-Contra affair was about an allegedly illegal diversion of funds derived from the sale of arms to Iran to anti-communist rebels in Nicaragua. Those are the Contras during the Reagan administration. This is from the New York Times. North outdraws the top show on daytime TV. This was replacing like The Price is Right or whatever the heck people were watching at the time during the day. This is back when people still watched soap operas during the day, right? This is before like people were watching YouTube and internet stuff. All right, this got a lot of press. Now, remember, one of our terms is a joint committee. So what was this hearings about? There were investigations. Okay, so the Iran-Contra hearings by a joint committee of both houses of Congress. So the Senate Committee on Secret Military Assistance to Iran and the Nicaraguan Opposition, right? That's the name of it that was created. And the House of Representatives Select Committee to investigate covert arms transactions with Iran. So these came about because of this. We're but one more episode in the almost constant 20th century battle between the presidency and power for Congress. Right? What is something we've learned about all year? Checks and balances, balance of power, who can do what powers does everyone have? So remember one of your terms, okay? A joint committee is composed of both members of both House of Reps and the Senate. Such committees oversee the Library of Congress and conduct investigations. This was an investigation. This was a big, huge investigation. Okay, so you can put joint committee as one of your connections. So if there was a multiple choice question that said this was created during the Iran-Contra affair and it mentions these committees and it said like, what type of committee is this? You would answer it's a joint committee, all right? I'm just trying to make up multiple choice questions in my head as I go along here. Okay, this is just going over some of the things that the Iran-Contra can reveal as it relates to this course. So you don't need to memorize this, but how does the president implement their policies? How can the president's agenda create tension and confrontation with Congress? Right? He was not happy that they banned that we couldn't support the Contras. The presidency has been enhanced beyond its expressed constitutional powers. And if you read down to the end, this relates to Federalist 70, which I'm going to go over at the end of this. Okay. So who has the power of the purse? Who remembers? And yes, Jesse, this will be shared. Congress, good, right? So remember, like, the sword is the president. The power of the purse is Congress.
The legislative is not.
The judicial.
The judicial.
Yes, the judicial is like, what powers do we have?
J and L's, they just look so similar.
They do. So what powers does the president receive, right? So he gets the power of the sword as commander-in-chief. That's Article 2, Section 2. And that states that the president shall be commander-in-chief of the Army and Navy of the U.S. and of the militia of several states when called into the actual service. What does that mean? We were not fighting the Sandinistas. We were not fighting Iran, but we were trying to release hostages and we wanted to support certain governments. Where do those lines, like where are they drawn as to what the commander-in-chief can do then? And what can Congress limit him from doing, right? And you see this come head to head here. I have not read this book, but just thought it was relatable. Okay. Also think, how does this relate to a historical era? One of the important historical eras we learned about was the whole civil rights and Vietnam era. And in Vietnam, Remember, Vietnam was not actually a war. Congress never declared a war. But the presidents at the time were doing lots of things. And as a result of Vietnam, Congress tried to rein in some of those presidential powers. You just can't send troops out for years without declaring a war. So, sweeping legislative enactments of the post-Vietnam era dramatically reasserted Congress's right to participate in nearly all arenas of foreign policy decision-making by expressly allocating policymaking responsibility not just vertically within the executive branch, but horizontally between the president and Congress. In other words, they made this law that says you can't financially support the Contras. So who gets to make decisions like that? Should that be something the president gets to make, or can Congress make laws about this? Okay, this comes from this journal here from 1988. Okay, so separation of powers, you really see this into play in this case. Okay, who gets to do what here? Remember, Federalist 70. Who did that for the one-pager? Right? Federalist 70. Oh, good. I look forward to that then. So this should help you remember even more. Federalist 70 asks for a strong executive. There can be no need, however, to multiply arguments. Oh, good. Jesse did as well. So we'll definitely get Federalist 70 after today. No need, however, to multiply arguments or examples on this head. A feeble executive implies a feeble execution of the government. The feeble execution is but another phrase for a bad execution, and a government ill executed, whatever it may be in theory, must be in practice a bad government. Federalist 70 advocates for a strong executive. So while it is true, and that's one of our big ideas, that the presidency has expanded over time, you might say Hamilton may have supported Reagan here. He may have said this is some things to show that we have a strong government that sometimes our executive branch needs to do. Right? So, like I said, Reagan did survive this, and he still left office with one of the highest approval ratings, if not the highest approval rating at the end of his presidency. But it really highlighted a lot of these tensions that we have within our government. Okay, so things you could connect it to. Federalist 70, Joint Committee. Those would be the two most significant ones. If you want to do two of the easier ones, would be separation of powers or mass media. But don't just do one that's easy, do one that makes you think. All right, so I will post this, but take a minute or two to try to put something up there on your document.